The desert stretched endless in every direction, a sea of rust and amber beneath a sky so vast it made a man feel small. Marcus Reeves had been feeling small for 8 months now, ever since the day he came home to find the note on the kitchen table and his daughter crying in her wheelchair alone. He was 62 years old. His hands had built engines, thrown punches that ended bar fights, gripped handlebars through 1,000 miles of American highway. Those same hands now struggled with the tiny buttons on a 7-year-old girl's adaptive clothing, fumbled with feeding tubes, shook when he had to make decisions about therapies and medications he barely understood. The Harley beneath him rumbled like distant thunder, the sound that had been the soundtrack of his adult life. Behind him, 4 more bikes followed in formation. His brothers. Not by blood, but by something deeper. The kind of bond forged in choices made and kept in showing up when it mattered, in the understanding that some families you're born into and others you build with your own scarred hands. Emma rode in the specially modified sidecar attached to his bike, secured with straps he'd checked 3 times before they left the motel that morning. He checked everything 3 times now. 4 times? 5. Because the margin for error when you're a 62-year-old biker raising a disabled daughter alone is exactly 0, and Marcus knew it. They'd been on the road for 3 weeks. California to Texas and back again, a route they ran twice a month for the club. Except now there was Emma, and everything that had once been simple, where to eat, where to sleep, how long to ride, had become a complex calculation of accessible bathrooms and medication schedules, and the constant gnawing fear that he was doing it all wrong. The sun was setting as they crossed into New Mexico, painting the desert in shades of fire. Marcus felt the exhaustion in his bones, the kind that sleep didn't touch anymore. He'd managed maybe 2 hours last night, startling awake every time Emma made a sound, checking to make sure she was breathing, that she hadn't somehow worked free of the straps that kept her positioned correctly in bed. Jake rode up alongside him, the oldest of the brothers, at 63, his gray beard whipping in the wind. He pointed ahead to a sign, Rose's Diner, exit 47. Marcus nodded. They needed fuel. Emma needed dinner. And if he was honest with himself, he needed to sit somewhere that wasn't moving for more than 20 minutes. The parking lot was gravel and dust. 5 Harleys rolling in made enough noise to turn heads, which they always did. Marcus had stopped caring about turned heads 30 years ago, when he'd first put on the leather vest with the patches that told the world exactly who he was and what he stood for. A Hell's Angel didn't apologize for taking up space. But now, as he carefully released the straps holding Emma in the sidecar, he felt something he'd rarely experienced in his adult life: self-consciousness. People stared at bikers. He was used to that. But the stares when they saw Emma, the rigid way her small body sat, the way her hands curled inward, the specialized wheelchair he was unfolding, those stares were different. Some were pity, some were awkward curiosity, some were the kind of careful looking away that hurt worse than the staring. Tommy and Mike flanked him as he lifted Emma from the sidecar. She was so light, 7 years old and barely 40 pounds, her body fighting itself with every breath, every movement. But her eyes were bright and alert and intelligent, trapped in a body that wouldn't cooperate. Cerebral palsy, the doctors called it. Brain damage from birth complications. Emma would never walk, never talk, never feed herself. But she understood everything. Marcus knew that with the certainty of a father who'd spent 8 months learning to read every flicker of expression, every slight movement that meant yes or no, or I'm scared, or I need you. He settled her into the wheelchair, adjusting her position with the practiced movements he'd learned from 100 YouTube videos and twice as many mistakes. Her head tilted to the left, it always did, and he gently supported it, making sure she was comfortable before releasing his hands. "Ready, baby girl?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. Emma's eyes moved to his face. That was her, yes. Danny held the diner door open. The bells above it chimed bright and cheerful as Marcus wheeled Emma inside. The conversations didn't exactly stop, but they changed quality, lowered, eyes tracking their movement to a corner booth. Marcus was scanning for accessibility. Was there room for the wheelchair? Were the aisles wide enough? Was there a changing table in the bathroom, because Emma would need that later when she appeared? Young, maybe mid-20s. Blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing the kind of uniform that marked her as someone working for tips, not career aspirations. Her eyes were tired, the kind of tired Marcus recognized because he saw it in his own mirror every morning. But her smile was genuine as she approached. Evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Rose's. Her voice was warm, professional. She didn't flinch at the leather vests or the patches or the general air of danger that five middle-aged bikers naturally projected. Right this way. She led them to this corner booth Marcus had been eyeing, and without being asked, she quickly removed one of the chairs to make space for Emma's wheelchair. It was a small thing maybe, but Marcus noticed. Most waitresses fumbled with it, uncertain, waiting to be told what to do. This one just did it. "I'm Sarah," she said, distributing menus around the table. Her eyes landed on Emma, and something in her expression softened. Not pity. Marcus had learned to identify pity in all its forms, and this wasn't that. This was something else. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. She crouched down to Emma's level, bringing herself eye to eye with his daughter. "And what's your name, sweetheart?" Marcus started to answer. He always had to answer for Emma, but Sarah's attention stayed on his daughter, patient waiting. "This is Emma," Marcus said finally, his voice catching slightly on his daughter's name. "She understands everything you say, but she can't talk back." Sarah nodded, still focused on Emma. "It's nice to meet you, Emma. I'm Sarah. I bet you've been on those motorcycles all day, haven't you? That must be exciting." Emma's eyes brightened and Sarah smiled. "I thought so. Well, let's get you some dinner. Are you hungry?" Emma's eyes flicked to Marcus, her way of saying yes through him. "She'll have the chicken tenders." Marcus said, his throat tight with an emotion he couldn't quite name. "Cut up real small, and mashed potatoes also cut small, extra soft, and a chocolate milkshake." Sarah was writing this down, but she glanced up at him with understanding in her eyes. "Texture issues." Marcus blinked. Most people didn't ask that. Most people didn't know to ask that. "Yeah, she can choke easy if the pieces are too big or too tough." "I have a cousin with CP," Sarah said simply. "Emily, she's 12 now. I know the drill. Small bites, soft textures, watch for swallowing, take it slow." Something in Marcus's chest loosened just slightly. Someone who understood without needing everything explained. Someone who'd said CP casually like it was just information, not a tragedy. The brothers ordered burgers, steaks, enough food to feed a platoon, and Sarah headed back to the kitchen. Marcus watched her go, then turned his attention to Emma, adjusting her position slightly, making sure her head was supported, that she looked comfortable. "She's good," Jake said quietly. At 63, Jake had been riding with Marcus longer than anyone. He knew when something mattered. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. He didn't say the rest of it, that in 3 weeks of diners and truck stops and roadside restaurants, Sarah was the first person who'd spoken directly to Emma, like she was a person, not an object of pity or a medical condition to navigate around. The diner was typical Southwest red vinyl booths, chrome accents, a jukebox in the corner, playing something country and old. Through the window, Marcus could see their bikes lined up outside chrome, catching the last light of sunset. For 20 years, that sight had meant freedom. Now it meant something more complicated. Responsibility. Isolation. The constant awareness that he was one mistake away from failing the small person who depended on him for everything. Sarah returned with their drinks. Sweet tea for the brothers, a Coke for Marcus, and Emma's chocolate milkshake, which she set down carefully within Marcus's reach. "Food will be up in about 15 minutes, she said. Then she paused, her eyes moving between Marcus and Emma. "Would you like me to bring extra napkins and maybe a bib?" Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Not from offense, from the simple acknowledgement that, yes, feeding Emma was messy, and yes, he needed those things, and no, there was no shame in it. That'd be appreciated. When she left, Mike leaned forward. "Been on the road 3 weeks straight, boss. You gotta sleep more than 2 hours at a stretch." "I'm fine." "You're not fine," Tommy cut in. "You're running yourself into the ground. When's the last time you had a hot meal that wasn't truck stop food? I eat. Cold burgers in motel rooms while Emma sleeps don't count." Jake's voice carried the weight of earned authority. "You keep this up, you'll collapse. Then, what happens to her?" Marcus's hands tightened on his glass. The question that kept him awake at night, that haunted every decision. "What happens to her if I fail? I'm doing the best I can." "We know that," Danny said, his voice gentler. "We're just saying you don't have to do it alone. Let us help more." "You help." Marcus looked around the table at these men, his brothers, in every way that mattered. They'd reorganized their entire lives around his new reality. They planned routes with accessibility in mind. They carried Emma's medical supplies on their bikes. They took shifts staying awake in motel rooms so Marcus could sleep even though he never really did. You help more than I deserve. Family doesn't deserve, Jake said. Family just is. The word lodged somewhere in Marcus's chest. Family. He'd thought he had that once. A wife, a daughter, a house in the suburbs that he'd bought specifically because it had a yard where a little girl could play. But Christine hadn't been able to handle it when Emma's delays became apparent, when the diagnoses started rolling in, when it became clear that their daughter would never be the child they'd imagined. She'd tried. Marcus gave her that much. For 5 years she'd tried. But trying wasn't the same as succeeding, and one morning he had come home from a club run to find Christine gone, and Emma crying unfed, unchanged for hours. The note had been brief. I can't do this anymore. I'm not strong enough. I'm sorry. No forwarding address, no phone number. Just gone like their vows and their partnership and their shared responsibility for the small person who needed them both had been optional contingent on everything being easy. 8 months ago. It felt like 8 years. The food arrived and Marcus's attention snapped back to the present. Sarah set their plates down with practiced efficiency, but when she got to Emma's meal, she paused. Marcus was already reaching for it, preparing to cut everything smaller to begin the careful, time-consuming process of feeding his daughter while his own food grew cold. Sarah glanced at him, then at Emma, then back to him. Would you like me to help feed her while you eat? Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant. I've done it with Emily 100 times. Small bites, watch for swallowing, take it slow. That way your food stays hot. Marcus froze. In 8 months of solo parenting, no one had offered that. Not family, what little family remained had disappeared when Emma became complicated. Not friends. Most of his friends were sitting at this table, and they helped in other ways, but feeding Emma required a specific skill set and patience that most people didn't have. And here was this stranger, this young waitress, working for tips in a desert diner, offering casually like it was nothing. You sure? His voice came out rougher than he intended. It takes a while. You've got other tables. Sarah glanced around the diner. An elderly man in the corner booth nursing coffee that would last him another hour. A young couple absorbed in each other. An older woman working a crossword puzzle over pie. I've got time. And besides, she smiled at Emma. I think Emma and I are going to be friends. Aren't we, Emma? Emma's eyes brightened in that way that Marcus had learned meant happiness, engagement, connection. His daughter, who'd been failed by her mother, neglected by extended family, stared at by strangers. His daughter was responding to this waitress with something that looked dangerously close to trust. Marcus nodded once, a sharp dip of his chin that somehow conveyed more than 1,000 words could. Yeah, okay, thank you. Sarah pulled up a chair, positioning herself between Marcus and Emma. She picked up the fork, cut a small piece of chicken tender, smaller than most people would think necessary, but exactly the right size, and turned to Emma with a gentle smile. Okay, Emma, here comes the first bite. You ready? Emma's mouth opened slightly, and Sarah carefully placed the food inside. Then she waited, patient, attentive, watching as Emma chewed slowly. The process couldn't be rushed. Every bite took time, required attention, demanded patience that most people simply didn't have. Good job, Sarah murmured. You're doing great. Want to try some mashed potatoes? Marcus picked up his own fork and took a bite of his burger. Hot. The food was actually hot, and he was eating it while it was still warm, and he didn't have to choose between feeding his daughter and feeding himself. The relief was so intense it was almost painful. Around him, his brothers had gone quiet, watching this young woman feed Emma with the kind of natural competence that spoke of real experience, not just good intentions. Sarah kept up a gentle stream of conversation, talking to Emma about the sunset, about a roadrunner she'd seen that morning, about anything and everything that made his daughter feel seen, feel normal, feel like more than just a medical condition that needed managing. You're a natural, Marcus said quietly between bites. Sarah glanced at him, still holding the fork steady for Emma's next bite. My cousin Emily taught me. Her mom, my aunt, works 2 jobs, so I help out when I can. Emily's shown me a lot about patience and about how the best conversations don't always need words. She smiled at Emma, and Marcus saw his daughter's eyes crinkle slightly at the corners. If Emma could smile with her mouth, she would be. He knew that. How long have you been doing this alone? Sarah asked. It wasn't nosy, just genuinely curious. 8 months. The words came out before Marcus could stop them. Her mother left, couldn't handle it. Sarah's hand paused for just a moment, then continued with Emma's next bite. That must be incredibly hard. It is. Marcus wasn't used to admitting that, wasn't used to acknowledging that he struggled, that he felt lost most days, that he lived in constant fear of making the wrong choice. I'm 62 years old. I've led a motorcycle club for 20 years. I've been in fights that would terrify most people. I've stared down cops and rival clubs in situations that should have killed me. He paused, watching Sarah wipe Emma's mouth gently with a napkin. And I'm more scared every single day now than I've ever been in my entire life. Sarah met his eyes. Because you love her. Fear is just love with nowhere to go. Something in Marcus's chest cracked open. This young woman, this stranger who'd been in their lives for less than an hour, understood something it had taken him months to figure out. Yeah, he managed. Yeah, that's it exactly. The brothers ate in comfortable silence, the kind of quiet that came from men who'd ridden together long enough that words weren't always necessary. But Marcus could feel their attention, the way they were witnessing this moment, understanding its significance. When Emma had finished as much as she could eat, Sarah carefully wiped her mouth gentle around the sensitive areas. You did such a good job, Emma. I'm so proud of you. Emma's eyes locked with Sarah's, bright and alert, and full of something Marcus hadn't seen enough of lately: joy. Simple, uncomplicated joy at being treated with dignity and kindness. What do we owe you for your time? Marcus asked, reaching for his wallet. Sarah stood collecting plates. For feeding a beautiful little girl who just made my whole evening better. She shook her head. Not a cent. That was my pleasure. Sarah, I mean it, she said, and there was steel beneath the kindness. Some things you don't do for money. You do them because they're right. Because everyone deserves kindness. She looked at Emma. Because she's worth it. Marcus felt something burning behind his eyes. When was the last time someone had said that to him, that Emma was worth it? Not worth the effort, not worth the struggle, just worth it, period. Inherently valuable, inherently deserving of care and attention and love. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a moment he couldn't speak, couldn't trust his voice not to break. He reached for his wallet, not for money but for the business card he kept there. The one with the club's contact information and his personal cell number. This has my number, he said, pressing it into Sarah's hand. His voice was low and tense. I'm serious about this. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. Car breaks down, you need money, someone's giving you trouble, you call. He held her gaze, making sure she understood. You showed my daughter dignity tonight. You saw her as a person, not a problem. That's rare. That's precious. His voice dropped lower. That means you're family now, you understand. In our world, family is sacred. You're under our protection now, whether you want it or not. Sarah looked down at the card, then back up at him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Thank you. Around him, his brothers stood, each of them nodding their agreement. Jake stepped forward and extended his hand. Name's Jake. That's Tommy, Mike, and Danny. What Bull said goes for all of us. You need something, you call. Sarah shook hands with each of them, clearly overwhelmed but holding it together. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Marcus told her. Just remember, you're family now. They paid their bill. The brothers left a tip that was easily 3 times the cost of the meal and prepared to leave. Marcus carefully maneuvered Emma's wheelchair toward the door but paused at the threshold. Sarah, he called back. She looked up from clearing their table. I mean what I said. Family is sacred in our world. You remember that? She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in her throat. Outside, the desert air was cooling rapidly, the way it always did after sunset. Marcus carefully transferred Emma from her wheelchair to the modified sidecar, securing her with movements that had become ritual. The wheelchair folded and was strapped to Danny's bike. Within minutes, the engines roared to life, 5 Harleys in formation, their headlights cutting through the gathering dark. As they pulled onto the highway, Marcus glanced in his mirror at the diner's lights receding behind them. Something had shifted tonight. Something important. For the first time in 8 months, he felt like maybe, just maybe, they weren't completely alone in this. The road stretched ahead endless in dark. But somewhere behind them was a young woman who'd shown his daughter dignity, who'd given him 20 minutes of peace, who'd reminded him that good people still existed in a world that often felt cruel and indifferent. Marcus didn't think he'd ever see Rosa's diner again. The road was long and bikers were always moving. He was wrong. 3 weeks later, when their route brought them back through New Mexico, Marcus found himself pulling into that gravel parking lot again. He told himself it was just convenient, just good timing, just a logical place to stop for dinner. But when Sarah's face lit up at the sight of them walking through the door, when Emma's eyes brightened with recognition, when Sarah immediately started clearing a space for the wheelchair, without being asked, Marcus admitted to himself the truth. They weren't just passing through anymore. They were coming back to this place where someone saw them, really saw them, and didn't look away. The pattern established itself over the following months. Every 2 to 3 weeks, when club business brought them through New Mexico, they stopped at Rosa's. Every time Sarah treated Emma with the same gentle dignity. Every time she insisted on helping feed Emma while Marcus ate a hot meal. And every time the bond between them deepened from strangers to something that felt increasingly like the family Marcus had claimed her as on that first night. 6 weeks after their first meeting, Marcus arrived at Rosa's to find Sarah looking exhausted, shadows under her eyes darker than usual. She tried to hide it, tried to maintain her professional smile, but Marcus had spent a lifetime reading people. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly after they'd been seated. "Fine," Sarah said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just one of those weeks." Marcus didn't push. But the next morning when Sarah came out to the diner's parking lot to start her shift, she found her car, the beat-up Honda, that had been making ominous noises for months, sitting there fully repaired. New tires, fixed transmission, detailed inside and out. The keys were with Rosa, along with a note in Marcus's distinctive scrawl, "Family helps family." Bull, Sarah had tried to refuse payment, had called the number on the card insisting she couldn't accept this. Marcus's response had been simple. "You fed my daughter, you gave me peace. This is nothing." 2 months after that, Sarah mentioned in passing that her apartment building had been bought by new management, that rents were going up, that she was struggling to make ends meet. She didn't ask for help, didn't hint, just shared the way friends do. 3 days later, Sarah came home from a double shift to find her apartment door open and the smell of smoke in the air. For one terrifying moment, she thought there'd been a break-in. Then she heard familiar voices inside. Marcus and his brothers were hauling furniture up the stairs. A new couch, a better mattress, kitchen supplies, a dresser, new clothes still with tags on them, sized exactly right. "What?" Sarah stood in the doorway, frozen. "What is this?" "Heard your building's rent went up," Marcus said, setting down a box of dishes. "Figured you could use some better stuff. Had some extras." The tags on the clothes told a different story. The receipt accidentally left in one of the bags showed a furniture store visit from that morning. This wasn't extras. This was Marcus spending money he probably didn't have much of on someone who wasn't blood because he decided she was family. Sarah had cried then, really cried, the kind of crying that comes from being seen, being valued, being cared for by people who had no obligation to do any of it. Marcus had looked uncomfortable with her tears. Big, tough bikers usually were, but he'd stepped forward and pulled her into a brief, hard hug. "This is what family does," he'd said simply. "We show up." By the 4th month, the visits to Rosa's had become the highlight of Marcus's cross-country routes. Emma would get excited when they approached the New Mexico border. Her eyes tracking the landscape like she recognized it, understood where they were going. And when they walked into the diner and Sarah smiled at them, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt like they belonged somewhere, like someone was happy to see them coming, instead of relieved to see them go. It was on one of these visits that everything changed. Sarah was refilling their coffee. The brothers had long since finished eating, but they were lingering the way they always did now, just enjoying the company when she said almost casually, "I'm thinking about applying to nursing school." Marcus looked up. "Yeah, there's a program in Albuquerque, pediatric specialty. I've been thinking about it for a while." She glanced at Emma. "Working with kids like Emma and my cousin Emily. Kids who need people who understand, who don't just see the disability." "You'd be incredible at that," Marcus said and meant it. Sarah smiled, but there was something wistful in it. Tuition's pretty steep, though. I've been saving, but it's going to take a few more years before I have enough. She moved on to another table, and Marcus sat back, his mind working. Around him, his brothers were exchanging glances. They all knew what the other was thinking. That night in a motel room while Emma slept, Marcus made some calls to the club treasurer, to brothers in other chapters, to people who owed him favors from 20 years of writing and leading and being there when it mattered. 2 weeks later, Sarah received a certified letter at Rose's diner. Her hand shook as she opened it, expecting a bill or bad news or one of the dozen small disasters that seemed to define her financial life. Instead, she found a letter from the University of New Mexico School of Nursing. An anonymous donor, the letter said, had established a scholarship fund in her name. Full tuition, books, living expenses, 4 years fully covered, contingent only on her acceptance and maintaining good grades. Sarah called the number on Marcus's card. He answered on the second ring. "I can't accept this." Her voice was thick with tears. "It's too much. I can't." "You can and you will," Marcus interrupted. His voice was firm but warm. "You fed my daughter when you didn't have to. You saw her as a person when most people see a wheelchair. You gave me 20 minutes to eat a hot meal in peace. You have no idea how much I needed that night." He paused, and Sarah could hear Emma making soft sounds in the background. "We'd been on the road for days," Marcus continued. "I was exhausted, worried about Emma, questioning every decision I'd ever made as a father, and you showed up and made it better. You reminded me that good people still exist, that Emma deserves dignity and kindness, and that there are people in this world who will give it to her." His voice roughened with emotion. "Nursing school is where you belong, Sarah. I looked into you. I hope you don't mind. You've been taking care of people your whole life, your cousin, your grandmother before she passed, half the folks in your neighborhood. You've got the heart for this work, and the world needs more nurses who see kids with disabilities as people first." "But this is so much money," Sarah whispered. "So you're going to take this scholarship. You're going to become an amazing nurse, and someday you're going to help families like mine. Families who are drowning and desperate and terrified they're failing their kids. That's not charity, Sarah. That's an investment in you, in Emma's future, in every kid like her who deserves caregivers who give a damn." There was a long pause. Then Marcus added, his tone lightening slightly. "Besides, your family. In our family, we take care of each other. No arguments." Sarah was full-on crying now, the kind of crying that comes from being given something you desperately wanted, but never dared to ask for. "I love you guys," she managed. "I love Emma. I love all of you." "We love you too, kid," Marcus said, and Sarah could hear the smile in his voice. "Now go fill out those applications. You've got work to do." The call ended, and Marcus sat in the dark motel room, listening to Emma's breathing, feeling something unfamiliar settling in his chest. Hope, maybe, or purpose, or the simple understanding that the best things in life, the things that actually mattered, had nothing to do with blood and everything to do with choice. He had chosen to stop at Rose's diner that first night. Sarah had chosen to feed his daughter. They had all chosen each other, building something that looked like family out of nothing more than kindness and showing up and refusing to let each other face the world alone. Outside, the desert was silent and vast. Inside, Marcus closed his eyes and for the first time in 8 months slept deeply and without fear, because his daughter was safe, because they'd found people who saw them, because somewhere in New Mexico, a young woman was filling out nursing school applications, and in 4 years she'd be helping families just like his. And because Marcus had learned the most important truth of his 62 years, love wasn't about blood or obligation or the families you were born into. Love was about showing up, about seeing someone's humanity and refusing to look away. About 20 minutes in a diner and a young woman who knew that some things aren't done for money. They're done because they're right. Marcus reached over and adjusted Emma's blanket, his rough, scarred hands gentle on his daughter's small shoulder. "We're going to be okay, baby girl," he whispered. "We found our people." Emma slept on peaceful and safe while outside the desert stars wheeled overhead and the road stretched on toward tomorrow. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in late September, 6 months after that certified letter had changed Sarah's life. She was working the breakfast shift at Rose's, When the mail carrier handed her the thick envelope with the University of New Mexico seal embossed in the corner, her hands trembled as she opened it. Around her, the diner continued its morning rhythm, coffee pouring bacon sizzling the low murmur of early customers, but Sarah's world had narrowed to the words on the page in front of her. Dear Ms. Hartley, congratulations. On behalf of the admissions committee, I am pleased to offer you acceptance into the University of New Mexico School of Nursing Pediatric Specialty Program beginning January. She read it 3 times before it felt real. Then she pulled out her phone and called the number she'd memorized months ago. Marcus answered on the first ring. Sarah, everything okay? I got in. Her voice broke on the words. I got into nursing school. I start in January. The silence on the other end lasted just long enough for Sarah to hear Marcus's sharp intake of breath. Then, that's my girl. I knew you would. I couldn't have done this without you. Without all of you. You did this yourself, Marcus corrected, but she could hear the smile in his voice. We just opened a door. You're the one walking through it. Emma, his voice moved away from the phone. Sarah got into nursing school. Sarah could hear Emma's excited vocalization in the background, that wordless sound of joy that she'd learned to recognize over the past months. Her eyes filled with tears. We're coming through next week, Marcus said. We'll celebrate, properly. You don't have to. Family celebrates family, Marcus interrupted. Rosa's, next Tuesday. Be ready for the biggest piece of pie you've ever seen. The call ended, and Sarah stood in the middle of the diner holding her acceptance letter and feeling like her life was finally moving in the direction it was meant to go. Rosa appeared at her elbow, the 70-year-old owner moving with the quiet grace of someone who'd spent 5 decades reading her customers and her staff with equal precision. Good news, the best news. Sarah showed her the letter. I got in. I'm going to be a nurse. Rosa's weathered face creased into a smile. That biker and his daughter, they changed your life, didn't they? They saved it, Sarah said quietly. I was treading water before I met them. Just surviving. Now I'm actually living. Rosa squeezed her shoulder. And you changed theirs too. Don't forget that. I've been watching Marcus these past months. That man came in here the first time looking like he was carrying the weight of the world. Now he looks like he remembers how to hope. That's because of you. Sarah wiped her eyes. We saved each other. That's how the best families work, Rosa said. The following Tuesday, Sarah heard the familiar rumble of motorcycles before she saw them. 5 Harleys pulling into the parking lot at Sunset Chrome, catching the last light of day. But something was different this time. As Marcus dismounted and began unbuckling Emma from the sidecar, Sarah noticed the way he moved slower, more carefully. One hand pressed briefly against his chest. She was out the door before she'd consciously decided to move. Marcus, he looked up, and for just a moment she saw something in his face. Pain, maybe, or exhaustion that went deeper than the usual road weariness. Then he smiled, and the expression vanished so completely, Sarah wondered if she'd imagined it. There's our college girl, he said, lifting Emma from the sidecar with his usual careful strength. Ready to celebrate. Inside, Rosa had prepared a small cake chocolate, Emma's favorite, and the corner booth was decorated with a handmade banner that read, Congratulations, Sarah, in shaky letters that could only have been Tommy's work. They ate and laughed and toasted with milkshakes and sweet tea. Emma's eyes were bright with happiness, tracking between Sarah and Marcus, like she understood the significance of the occasion. The brothers told embarrassing stories about Marcus from years past, bar fights and bad decisions, and the time he tried to impress a woman by jumping his bike over a parked car and ended up in the hospital instead. I was 35 and stupid, Marcus protested, but he was laughing, and Sarah realized she'd never heard him laugh quite like this before. Unguarded. Easy. Like he'd finally learned how to carry his burdens without being crushed by them. But as the evening wore on, Sarah kept noticing small things. The way Marcus shifted in his seat like he couldn't quite get comfortable. The way his hand would drift to his chest when he thought no one was watching. The barely perceptible tightness around his eyes. When he excused himself to take Emma to the restroom, a process that required the accessible stall and 15 minutes of careful maneuvering, Purvis pulled Jake aside. Is Marcus okay? He seems off. Jake's expression shuddered the way it did when he was protecting club business. He's fine, just tired from the road. Jake, Ira kept her voice low but firm. I've been watching him for 6 months. I know what tired from the road looks like. This is something else. The older man studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. Had some chest pains last week. Went to a clinic. They said it was probably indigestion, stress, told him to take it easy, get more rest. Sarah's stomach dropped. Chest pains at 62, and they said it was indigestion. That's what the doc said. Did they do an EK cardiac enzyme stress test? Jake blinked. I don't know. Marcus didn't say much about it. Sarah's nursing school classes didn't start for 3 months, but she'd been devouring every textbook she could get her hands on preparing studying, and everything she'd read about cardiac symptoms in older men was screaming alarm bells in her head. He needs to see a cardiologist, she said. Real tests, not just a clinic visit. Good luck getting him to do that. Man's stubborn as they come. Then we'll have to be more stubborn, Sarah said. When Marcus returned with Emma, Sarah was waiting. I need to talk to you privately. Marcus's eyebrows rose, but he nodded. They stepped outside into the parking lot, the desert air cool against Sarah's flushed face. Jake told me about the chest pains. Marcus's expression hardened. Jake talks too much. Marcus, you're 62 years old with cardiac symptoms. You can't just ignore that. It was indigestion, the doctor said. The doctor at a walk-in clinic, Sarah interrupted. Did they do an EKG, any real cardiac workup? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Listened to my heart, said it sounded fine. That's not enough. You need to see a cardiologist. You need proper tests. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. Emma needs you. She can't lose you. Something in Marcus's face softened. Sarah, and I need you too, she added quieter now. You changed my life. You're the closest thing to a father I've had in 10 years. So you don't get to have chest pains and blow them off as nothing. You don't get to risk leaving Emma alone because you're too stubborn to see a doctor properly. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the darkening desert. I'm scared, he finally said so quietly Sarah almost didn't hear him. If it's something serious, if it's my heart, what happens to Emma, I'm all she has. That's exactly why you need to know, Sarah said gently. If something's wrong, we catch it now, we treat it. We make sure you're around to see Emma grow up, to see me graduate, to walk me down the aisle someday if I ever find someone worth marrying. Marcus smiled despite himself. You planning on getting married? Not anytime soon, but the point stands. You need to take care of yourself, not just for Emma, for all of us. The door to the diner opened and Tommy stuck his head out. Everything okay out here? Yeah, Marcus said, his eyes still on Sarah. Everything's okay. Sarah's just reminding me that I'm not allowed to be stupid about my health. About damn time someone did, Tommy said. Been telling you the same thing for weeks. 2 days later, Marcus called Sarah from a cardiologist's office in Albuquerque. The news wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. Moderate coronary artery disease. High blood pressure that had gone untreated for years. The doctor prescribed medication, dietary changes, and stern warnings about stress management. Looks like I'm not invincible after all, Marcus said, trying for humor, but not quite landing it. None of us are, Sarah replied, but you're going to be okay. You're going to take your medications, follow the diet plan, and let your brothers help you more with Emma. Right. Yes, ma'am. There was a pause. Thank you, Sarah, for caring enough to push. That's what family does, she said, echoing words he'd spoken to her months ago. We show up. November brought the first cold snap, and with it a shift in the routine. Sarah's last semester at the community college was winding down. She'd been taking prerequisite courses part-time, while working at Rosa's and nursing school loomed on the horizon like a promise and a terror combined. Marcus and the brothers came through on a Thursday evening earlier than usual. Sarah noticed immediately that something was different. The easy camaraderie was still there, but underneath it ran a current of tension she couldn't quite identify. It was only after they'd eaten, after Sarah had helped feed Emma and the brothers, had their usual coffee and pie, that Marcus said, "We need to talk to you about something." Sarah's stomach tightened. Okay. Marcus glanced at his brothers, then back to Sarah. You're starting nursing school in January. 4 years full-time. You can't keep working full-time at the diner and do that program justice. I know. I've been trying to figure out the finances, but the scholarship covers tuition and books, so I just need to work enough for rent and food." "You're not working at all," Marcus interrupted. Sarah blinked. "What?" "The scholarship covers living expenses," Jake added. "We made sure of that when we set it up." "But I'll need more than basic expenses. There's was in medical insurance and—" "All covered," Marcus said firmly. "You're going to focus on school. That's it. No splitting your attention between studying and serving tables. You're going to give this program everything you have." Sarah's throat tightened. "Marcus, I can't let you—" "It's not a discussion," he said, but his voice was gentle. "You're going to be a nurse, a damn good one. And you're going to help families like mine, families who are scared and overwhelmed and don't know how to navigate the medical system with disabled kids. But you can only do that if you give it your full attention." "He's right," Rosa said, appearing from the kitchen. Sarah hadn't realized the older woman was listening. "I've been watching you run yourself ragged for 2 years, honey. It's time to let people help you the way you've been helping everyone else." Sarah looked around the table at Marcus with his weathered face and fierce protectiveness, at the brothers who'd become uncles in every way that mattered, at Emma, with her bright, intelligent eyes, at Rosa, who'd given her a job and a safe place when she'd had nothing. "I don't know how to let people take care of me," she admitted. "You learned," yeah, Marcus said, "same way I learned to let you feed my daughter. Same way I learned to let these knuckleheads help me with Emma instead of trying to do everything alone. You just let go and trust that we've got you." Sarah's last shift at Rosa's was on a Saturday in mid-December. The regulars had pitched in for a going-away party. Nothing fancy, just pie and coffee, and the kind of small-town warmth that Sarah had learned to treasure over the past 2 years. Marcus and the crew showed up at closing time after the other customers had filtered out. Emma was bundled against the winter cold, a knitted cap pulled low over her ears. "Got something for you," Marcus said, handing Sarah an envelope. Inside was a key and an address in Albuquerque near the university campus. "What is this apartment?" Danny said. "2-bedroom, accessible, close to campus and the hospital where you'll be doing clinicals." "We can't afford the rent. In Albuquerque is—" "Already paid," Tommy interrupted. 2 years up front. After that, you'll be doing your clinicals and making enough to cover it yourself." Sarah's hands were shaking. "This is too much. You've already done so much." "Look at me," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of command that made him a natural leader. Sarah's eyes snapped to his. "You fed my daughter. You saw her as a human being when most of the world sees a burden. You reminded me that good people exist. You pushed me to see a doctor when I was being too stubborn and stupid to do it myself." He stepped closer, his expression intense. "You probably saved my life, Sarah. The cardiologist said if I'd gone another year without treatment, I'd likely have had a massive heart attack. Would have left Emma alone. So this apartment, this support, it's not charity. It's gratitude. It's family, taking care of family. It's us making sure you succeed, because when you succeed, you help people like Emma. You help fathers like me. You make the world less cruel for disabled kids and their families." His voice roughened with emotion. "So you're going to take this key. You're going to move into that apartment. You're going to become the best damn pediatric nurse the state of New Mexico has ever seen. And you're not going to argue about it." "Understood." Sarah was crying now, the kind of crying that comes from being seen and valued and loved by people who have no obligation to do any of it. "I don't deserve you guys." "Nobody deserves family," Jake said. "Family just is. You're ours now. Deal with it." The move happened over Christmas weekend. The brothers showed up with a truck and muscle and the kind of efficient organization that came from years of coordinating club activities. By sunset on Saturday, Sarah's meager belongings were installed in an apartment that was bigger and nicer than anywhere she'd ever lived. The second bedroom, she realized, had been set up as a study. Desk, ergonomic chair, bookshelves already stocked with nursing textbooks that must have cost hundreds of dollars. On the desk was a framed photo Sarah and Emma and Marcus taken at Rosa's during one of their celebrations. Emma was smiling with her eyes. Marcus had his arm around Sarah's shoulders, and all three of them looked like what they were, family. That night, after the brothers had left and Sarah was alone in her new apartment, her phone rang. "Marcus, everything okay with the place?" "It's perfect," Sarah said. "Too perfect. I keep waiting to wake up and find out this is all a dream." "It's real," Marcus assured her. "You're real. Your future is real. And we're all going to be there watching you build it. There was a pause, then Marcus added, Emma wants to talk to you. Sarah heard rustling, then Emma's breathing on the line. Hey, sweetheart, Sarah said softly. Are you proud of me? I'm pretty nervous about school. Emma made a sound, her happy sound, the one that meant yes, and I love you, and you've got this all at once. She's excited for you, Marcus translated. We all are. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'm going to make her proud. She already knows, Marcus said, but I'll tell her anyway. Nursing school started with the kind of intensity that left no room for doubt or second-guessing. Sarah threw herself into anatomy and physiology, pharmacology, and pathophysiology, learning to think like a nurse, to see patients as whole people rather than collections of symptoms. Marcus and the brothers came through Albuquerque every 3 weeks, their route adjusted to include her city now. They'd take her to dinner, let her complain about impossible professors and the sheer volume of information she was expected to absorb, remind her why she was doing this when the stress felt overwhelming. Emma, now 8 years old, had grown. Not much physically, her condition meant she'd always be small, but in awareness and personality, in the way her eyes tracked conversations, and her sounds became more nuanced in their meaning. She got in an adaptive communication device, something Sarah had researched, and Marcus had fought the insurance company for months to obtain. The first time Emma used it to spell out ILOVEYOUSARAH, Sarah had cried so hard she couldn't see the screen to respond. The spring semester brought clinical rotations, and Sarah found herself on a pediatric floor working with children who had complex medical needs. Kids with cerebral palsy like Emma. Kids with genetic disorders and chromosomal abnormalities, and all the ways that bodies could be beautifully, heartbreakingly different. She was good at it, better than good. Her instructors noticed how the kids responded to her, how she could calm a screaming child with a few quiet words, how she never showed frustration or pity, just steady, competent care mixed with genuine warmth. You're a natural, her supervisor said during a mid-semester review. Have you considered specializing in pediatric neurology? Sarah thought of Emma of Marcus learning to do physical therapy exercises from YouTube videos of all the families she'd seen struggling to navigate a medical system that wasn't designed for their children's needs. Yes, she said, that's exactly what I want to do. It was late April when Marcus called at 2 in the morning. Sarah jolted awake, her heart already pounding, because nothing good ever came from 2 a.m. phone calls. Marcus, what's wrong? I'm in the hospital. His voice was tight with pain. Heart attack. Small one, they say, but they're keeping me for a few days. Emma's with Jake, but I'm coming, Sarah interrupted, already throwing on clothes. Which hospital? University Hospital. But Sarah, you've got class. I'm coming, she repeated. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She made it in 15. Marcus was in a cardiac care unit, monitors beeping, IV lines running to his arm. He looked older than his 63 years, gray and tired and scared in a way Sarah had never seen him. Hey, she said softly, taking his hand. You're okay. You're going to be okay. Emma, he said, if something happens to me, nothing's happening to you. You caught it early. They're going to put in a stent, adjust your medications, and you're going to be fine. Sarah spoke with more confidence than she felt, but nursing school had taught her that sometimes confidence was part of the treatment. But if something does, Marcus's grip on her hand tightened. There's paperwork. In my apartment, legal stuff. I made you Emma's guardian. If anything happens to me, she goes to you. Not the state, not some distant relative who doesn't know her. You. Sarah's breath caught. Marcus. I should have asked first. He continued, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them in for months. Should have talked to you about it, but I couldn't think of anyone else. Anyone who sees her the way you do, who loves her the way I do. I know it's asking a lot. Yes, Sarah interrupted. Marcus blinked. What? Yes, of course yes. If anything happens to you, which it won't, but if it does, Emma comes to me. She's my family. You both are. Sarah's voice was fierce now. But you're not going anywhere, Marcus. You hear me? Emma needs her dad. I need my... She stopped, the word catching in her throat. You're what? Marcus asked softly. My dad, Sarah finished, tears streaming down her face. You're the dad I always needed. You and Emma, you saved me. So you don't get to leave us. You fight. You get better. You come home. That's an order. Marcus smiled despite the pain and the fear and the monitors beeping around them. Yes, ma'am. The brothers arrived an hour later, Jake bringing Emma in her wheelchair. The little girl's face was streaked with tears, her eyes wide with fear. Sarah knelt beside the wheelchair, taking Emma's hand. He's okay, sweetheart. Your daddy's going to be okay. They're going to fix his heart, and he'll be home soon. Emma's eyes searched Sarah's face, looking for truth, for reassurance. Sarah held her gaze steady and certain. I promise. We're not losing him. He's too stubborn. Emma made a sound that might have been a laugh, and Marcus, watching from the hospital bed, felt something in his chest ease that had nothing to do with his cardiac condition. The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. Sarah skipped her classes, sent apologetic emails to her professors, knowing they'd understand or they wouldn't, but not caring either way, and stayed at the hospital. The brothers took shifts, never leaving Marcus alone, creating a protective circle around one of their own. When they wheeled Marcus away to the cardiac catheterization lab, Sarah held Emma on her lap in the waiting room, both of them terrified but trying to be brave for each other. Your dad's strong, Sarah murmured, stroking Emma's hair. He's survived everything life has thrown at him. He's going to survive this too. Emma's communication device, perched on the wheelchair beside them, lit up with slowly spelled letters, WHATIF. No what ifs, Sarah said firmly. We think positive. We hope. We pray if you're the praying type, and we trust that he's going to come back to us. The procedure took 2 hours. When the cardiologist finally emerged, his face was professionally neutral, in that way that made Sarah's nursing instincts scream. But then he smiled. He did great. 2 stents placed, blood flow restored. He'll need to stay a few days for monitoring, but barring complications, full recovery expected. Sarah felt her legs nearly give out. Jake steadied her, while Danny let out a whoop that echoed through the waiting room. Emma made a sound, her happy sound, the one that meant relief and joy and thank God all at once. Can we see him? Sarah asked. Give him another hour to come fully out of sedation, then yes. When they finally wheeled Marcus back to his room, his eyes found Sarah and Emma first. Hey, he said, his voice rough from the breathing tube. Told you I was too stubborn to die. Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. Yeah, you did. Now you're going to follow every single one of your doctor's orders, take your medications, eat the boring, heart-healthy diet, and stop trying to do everything yourself, right? Do I have a choice? No, Sarah, Jake, Tommy, Mike, and Danny said in unison. Marcus smiled, his eyes drifting closed. Good, I'm tired of doing everything alone anyway. Emma's device lit up. LOVEYOUDADD. Love you too, baby girl, Marcus murmured. Love all of you, my family. Sarah stayed at the hospital for 3 days, sleeping in a chair beside Marcus's bed, helping the nurses with his care in that way nursing students do when they're trying to absorb everything they can. The cardiac nurses noticed her competence, her natural instinct for patient care, and one of them pulled her aside on the 3rd day. You're a nursing student. Yes, ma'am, 2nd semester. You should consider cardiac care. You're good with patients, good with families. That combination is rare. Sarah glanced through the window at Marcus sleeping peacefully now, his color returning as monitors showing strong, steady rhythms. I'm planning on pediatrics, but I appreciate that. The nurse smiled. Pediatrics is lucky to get you. Marcus came home a week later, moving into Sarah's 2nd bedroom because the brothers' apartments weren't accessible and someone needed to monitor him during recovery. Emma moved in too, the 3 of them creating a temporary household that felt surprisingly natural. Sarah adjusted her class schedule, took some lectures online, made it work. She cooked heart-healthy meals from recipes her nutrition professor recommended. She monitored Marcus's medications, checked his blood pressure, made sure he rested instead of trying to immediately return to his normal routine. In the evenings after Emma was settled for the night, Sarah and Marcus would sit on the small balcony, watching the Albuquerque sunset paint the Sandia Mountains in shades of pink and gold. I'm slowing down, Marcus said one night about 3 weeks into his recovery. Getting old. 63 feels different than 62 somehow. You had a heart attack, Sarah pointed out. You're allowed to feel different. Emma needs more than I can give her long term. She's 8 now. In 10 years, she'll be 18. I'll be 73, if I even make it that long. Don't talk like that. It's realistic, Marcus said gently. I need to make sure she's taken care of, that she has people who will be there when I can't be anymore. She has me, Sarah said, and the brothers, and a whole community of people who love her. I know. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I made you her legal guardian, but I'm also setting up a trust, money for her care, instructions for her medical needs. Everything she'll need if when I'm gone. Marcus, let me finish, he interrupted. I need to say this. You changed everything, Sarah. Before I met you, I was drowning. Terrified I was failing Emma. Convinced I was the wrong person to be her father. Then you showed up and reminded me that love doesn't require perfection. It just requires showing up. He turned to look at her, his eyes serious. You're going to be an incredible nurse. You're going to help so many families. But you've already helped mine more than you'll ever know. You gave me hope when I had none. You became the daughter I never knew I needed. You loved my daughter like she was your own. His voice roughened. So I want you to know, legally, officially, emotionally, you're Emma's family. You're my family. And when I'm gone, I'll go peacefully because I know she's got you. Sarah was crying now, the kind of quiet tears that come from being given a responsibility so huge and so precious that it feels like both a burden and a gift. I won't let you down, she whispered. Either of you. I know, Marcus said. That's why I chose you. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the mountains fade from pink to purple to shadow. Inside the apartment, Emma slept peacefully, safe and loved, and surrounded by family that had nothing to do with blood and everything to do with choice. The next morning, Sarah woke to find Marcus already up making breakfast with Emma in her wheelchair. Beside him, both of them working together in that synchronized way they'd developed over years of practice. Emma was using her communication device to spell out what she wanted, Marcus responding with practiced ease. Morning, Sarah said, pouring coffee. Morning, Marcus replied. He looked better today, color in his face, steadier on his feet, more like himself. Emma and I were talking. She wants to come to your graduation. Sarah glanced at Emma, whose eyes were bright with excitement. That's 3 years away. We know, Marcus said, but we're planning ahead, making sure we're there for all the big moments. He paused. Making sure I take care of myself so I make it to all those moments. Emma's device lit up DADDYPROMISED. I did, Marcus confirmed. Promised her I'd stick around to see you become a nurse, to see her grow up, to be there for whatever comes next. Sarah felt her throat tighten. Then I guess you better keep that promise. I intend to, Marcus said. After all, you taught me that showing up is what matters most. So I'm going to keep showing up. For Emma, for you, for this family we built. He raised his coffee mug in a small toast. To showing up. Sarah and Emma, using her adaptive cup, clinked their mugs against his. To showing up, Sarah echoed. Outside, the New Mexico sun climbed higher, burning off the morning chill. Inside, a family that had been built from kindness and choice, and refusing to give up on each other, prepared for whatever came next. Because that's what families do. They show up. They fight for each other. They turn strangers into sisters and daughters and fathers through the simple act of seeing each other's humanity and refusing to look away. And sometimes in the space between one heartbeat and the next, they save each other's lives in ways that have nothing to do with medicine and everything to do with love. The Road Home, Part 3, The Legacy. 4 years passed like water through open hands, swift and precious, and impossible to hold on to, even as every moment changed the shape of everything it touched. Sarah stood in her cap and gown on a May morning that smelled of possibility and cut grass, waiting in the wings of the University of New Mexico Arena, while names were called in alphabetical order. Her hands were shaking. Not from nerves about walking across the stage. She'd survived 4 years of impossible exams and clinical rotations that tested every limit she had. She was shaking because somewhere in the audience, 3 people were waiting who'd made all of this possible. The dean's voice echoed through the sound system. Sarah Elizabeth Hartley, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, Pediatric Specialty, summa cum laude. Sarah walked onto the stage, her eyes scanning the audience. It took her only seconds to find them. Front row, exactly where they'd promised they'd be. Marcus at 67, grayer now, but stronger than he'd been 4 years ago. His cardiac rehab and medication compliance having given him back years the doctors said he shouldn't have expected. Beside him, Emma at 12, her wheelchair decorated with balloons and a banner that read, "Congratulations, Sarah," in letters Emma had painstakingly selected one by one on her communication device. And flanking them, the four brothers, Jake, Tommy, Mike, and Danny, all wearing their leather vests over button-down shirts, a compromise between who they were and the formal occasion. The loudest cheers in the entire arena came from those six people. Sarah accepted her diploma, shook the dean's hand, and looked directly at her family. Marcus had his hand over his heart. Emma's device was flashing rapidly with pre-programmed words, "Proud, proud, proud." The brothers were on their feet, whooping like they were at a motorcycle rally instead of a nursing school graduation. Sarah pressed her diploma to her chest and mouthed, "I love you." The celebration afterward was at a restaurant Marcus had rented out entirely at expense Sarah knew he couldn't really afford, but would never admit to. The brothers had pitched in, of course, the way they always did, the way family does when something matters. "Speech," Tommy called out, tapping his fork against his glass. "The graduate has to make a speech." Sarah stood her legs still unsteady from the surreal reality of being done, of having actually made it through. She looked around the table at these people who'd become her everything. "4.5 years ago," she began, her voice not quite steady, "I was a waitress in a desert diner, barely making rent, convinced that my life was always going to be about surviving instead of living. I had dreams but no path to them. I had determination but no opportunity." She turned to Marcus. Then a man walked into that diner with his daughter. A man who was exhausted and scared and doing the hardest thing any person can do, raising a child alone, a child with complex needs, while the whole world judged him for the leather he wore and the patches on his vest. Marcus's eyes were already bright with unshed tears. "He asked me for nothing," Sarah continued, "but I saw something in him that night. I saw love that was bigger than fear. I saw a father who would ride 1,000 miles on a motorcycle to make sure his daughter got chicken tenders, cut the right size. I saw a man who was gentle despite a world that had taught him to be hard." She had to pause, her throat closing. "And then he saw something in me. He saw potential I didn't know I had. He saw a future I couldn't imagine. And he decided, along with his brothers, his family, to invest in that future. Not because he owed me anything, not because there was anything in it for him, but because that's what family does." Sarah moved to stand beside Emma's wheelchair. "This beautiful girl taught me that communication doesn't require words, that intelligence shines through any barrier the body might create, that joy can exist in the smallest moments, a chocolate milkshake, a sunset, a smile that lives in someone's eyes instead of their mouth." Emma's hand twitched towards Sarah, and Sarah took it, gentle and familiar. "You taught me to see people, Emma. Really see them. Not their limitations, but their humanity." She looked back at Marcus. "You asked me once if I knew what I was getting into accepting you as family, accepting responsibility for Emma if anything happened to you. And the truth is, I didn't. I had no idea." Marcus tensed slightly, and Sarah smiled. "I had no idea how much richer my life would become, how much purpose I'd find, how much love one human heart could actually hold when you stop protecting it and just let people in." She raised her glass. "I graduated today with highest honors. I start my position at Children's Hospital in 2 weeks as a pediatric nurse in the neurology department. In 5 years, I plan to have my nurse practitioner certification. In 10 years, I want to run a clinic specifically for families with children who have complex medical needs." Sarah's voice strengthened. "And every single bit of that journey started because a biker stopped at a diner and let a waitress feed his daughter. Because kindness rippled out in ways none of us could have predicted. Because family isn't about blood, it's about showing up." She held up her glass higher. "To Marcus, who taught me what real strength looks like. To Emma, who taught me what real communication looks like. To Jake, Tommy, Mike, and Danny, who taught me that brotherhood means chosen family. And to all of us for choosing each other." "To family," Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. "To family," the table echoed. They drank, they ate, they laughed. Emma used her communication device to tell terrible jokes she'd been saving up, and Marcus groaned at every punchline while secretly being delighted that his daughter had developed a sense of humor. The brothers told stories from the road, carefully edited for mixed company. And Sarah, for the first time in 4 intense, exhausting years, let herself just breathe. Later after the meal, Marcus handed Sarah a small velvet box. Graduation present. Inside was a silver pendant on a delicate chain, an angel with motorcycle wings. On the back engraved in tiny letters, Family Forever, MEGTIMD. It's beautiful, Sarah whispered. You're ours, Marcus said simply. Now it's official. Sarah put the necklace on, and Emma clapped the uncoordinated movement that was her version of applause. The sound was the most beautiful thing Sarah had ever heard. The transition from student to working nurse was brutal in ways Sarah hadn't fully anticipated. The clinical rotations had been challenging, but they were temporary, supervised, educational. Now she was responsible. Real patients, real families, real consequences if she made mistakes. Her specialty was pediatric neurology, which meant children like Emma. Kids with cerebral palsy, epilepsy, brain injuries, genetic disorders that affected neurological development. Kids whose bodies worked differently, whose families were exhausted and scared and desperate for someone who understood. Sarah understood. 3 weeks into her new position, a family arrived in the neurology clinic. Father in his late 50s, daughter about 9 years old in a wheelchair, cerebral palsy obvious in the rigid way she held her body. The father looked like Marcus had looked that first night, exhausted, overwhelmed, trying to hold it together through sheer force of will. Sarah introduced herself, then crouched to the daughter's level. Hi there, I'm Sarah. What's your name? The father started to answer, but Sarah held up a gentle hand. Let me try something first. She looked back at the girl. Can you blink once for yes, twice for no? The girl blinked once, her eyes sharp with intelligence. Great. Is your name something that starts with A through M? 2 blinks, no. N through Z, 1 blink, yes. Sarah continued the game, narrowing it down letter by letter until they established the girl's name was Sophie. The entire time, Sophie's eyes grew brighter, more engaged, and the father was staring at Sarah like she'd just performed a miracle. How did you know to do that? He asked, his voice thick. I have a sister, Sarah said, the word coming naturally now. Cerebral palsy. She taught me that communication takes a lot of forms. You just have to be willing to listen. The father broke down crying right there in the exam room. Everyone talks around her, to me about her, but never to her, like she's not even there. She's there, Sarah said firmly. She's right there, and she's been waiting for someone to notice. I see you, Sophie. Sophie made a sound wordless but full of emotion, and Sarah knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was supposed to be. That night, she called Marcus. I met a family today, a dad and his daughter. They reminded me of you and Emma. Yeah, Marcus sounded tired but interested. What happened? Sarah told him about Sophie, about the father's tears, about the simple act of speaking directly to a child that everyone else had been talking around. You did that because of us, Marcus said quietly, because you learned to see Emma. I did it because you taught me that every person deserves dignity, Sarah corrected. That disability doesn't mean absence of personhood. You taught me that, Marcus, and now I get to teach other people. That's the ripple, Marcus said. That's how kindness spreads. You fed my daughter once. Now you're feeding hundreds of other children with the skills you learned from that experience. That's legacy, Sarah. Our legacy, Sarah said. All of us together. 6 months into her new position, Sarah approached her supervisor with a proposal. I want to start a support group for parents of children with complex neurological conditions, a place where they can share resources, support each other, learn from medical professionals in a non-clinical setting. Her supervisor, a woman in her 50s who'd been in pediatric nursing for 30 years, studied the written proposal Sarah had prepared. This is ambitious. Would you run it? I'd facilitate it, yes, but I'd also want to bring in families who've successfully navigated these challenges. Let them mentor newly diagnosed families. Create a community. You have someone in mind to start with, Sarah smiled. I know a biker and his daughter who might be interested in sharing their story. The first meeting of what would eventually become Emma's Voice was held on a Tuesday evening in September in a conference room at the hospital. Sarah had expected maybe 5 families. 20 showed up. Marcus and Emma sat at the front of the room, and Marcus told their story, how terrified he'd been when his wife left, how he'd learned to do physical therapy from YouTube videos at 2 in the morning, how he'd modified his motorcycle so Emma could ride safely, how he'd found a community of brothers who'd helped him raise his daughter when he couldn't do it alone. "I'm not going to lie to you," Marcus said, his rough voice carrying to every corner of the room. "It's the hardest thing I've ever done, harder than war, harder than anything life threw at me before Emma. There are days I still doubt myself, days I still wonder if she'd be better off with someone else." He paused his hand on Emma's shoulder. "But then I remember something a very wise young woman once told me. She said love doesn't require perfection. It just requires showing up. So that's what I do. I show up every day for Emma, and she's taught me more about strength and joy and resilience than I could have learned in 100 lifetimes without her." Emma's communication device lit up with pre-programmed words, "My daddy is my hero." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Afterward, parents crowded around Marcus and Sarah, asking questions, sharing their own stories, exchanging phone numbers. The father Sarah had met months ago, Sophie's dad, gripped Marcus's hand like a lifeline. "You give me hope," he said, "that we can do this, that it's possible." "You can do it," Marcus assured him, "and you don't have to do it alone. That's what this is for. Community, family, people who understand because they're living it too." Emma's voice grew rapidly. Within 6 months, they had weekly meetings, a resource library, a mentorship program, pairing experienced families with newly diagnosed ones. Sarah applied for grants, fundraised, turned her small idea into something that served over 100 families. And at the center of it all was Emma. Not as a victim, not as inspiration porn, but as a person whose voice, amplified through technology and community, was changing how people understood disability and family and love. It was during one of these meetings, almost 2 years after Sarah had started working at the hospital, that Marcus's phone rang. He stepped out to take the call, and when he came back in, his face was ashen. Sarah knew immediately. "What's wrong?" "Christine," he said quietly. "She's dying, cancer, stage 4. She wants to see Emma." The room seemed to tilt. Christine, Emma's mother, who'd walked away when Emma was 5, who hadn't called or visited or checked in for 7 years. Now she wanted back in because she was dying and facing her choices. "What do you want to do?" Sarah asked. Marcus looked at Emma, who'd been listening with that focused intensity that meant she understood every word. "It's not my choice. It's hers." He knelt beside Emma's wheelchair, bringing himself to her eye level. "Your mom is sick, baby girl. Really sick. She wants to see you, but only if you want to see her. This is your choice. Whatever you decide, I support you. We all support you." Emma was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant. Then her fingers moved to her communication device. Slowly, letter by letter, IWANTTOSEEHER. The meeting with Christine happened in a hospice facility 2 weeks later. Sarah drove. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, gripping the door handle so hard his knuckles were white, and Emma was secured in the back in her specialized car seat. "You don't have to do this," Marcus said for the 10th time. Emma's device responded, YESIDO. Christine was a shadow of the woman Sarah had seen in old photos. Cancer had stolen her weight, her hair, her vitality. But her eyes, when she saw Emma being wheeled into the room, those filled with something that looked like regret and love mixed together. "Hi, baby," Christine whispered. "You got so big." Emma stared at her mother, expressionless. Sarah stood behind the wheelchair, ready to intervene if this became too much. Marcus stood to the side, his body language screaming protective tension. "I'm sorry," Christine said, tears already streaming down her hollow cheeks. "I'm so sorry I left. I was weak. I was scared. I couldn't handle seeing you struggle, knowing I couldn't fix you. So I ran away like a coward." Emma's device stayed silent. "Your daddy, he's a better person than I ever was. He stayed. He fought for you. He learned everything, did everything, became everything you needed." Christine's voice broke. "He loved you bigger than his fear. I didn't, and I'm sorry." Still, Emma said nothing through her device. "I don't expect forgiveness," Christine continued. "I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life, that not a day has gone by when I didn't think about you. Wonder if you were okay. Hope you were happy." She reached out a trembling hand, stopping short of touching Emma, asking permission. "Can I hold your hand just once?" Emma looked at Sarah, then at Marcus, then back at her mother. Finally, her hand moved slightly forward. Christine took it gently, carefully, like it was made of glass. "You're so beautiful," Christine whispered. "So strong, stronger than I ever was. I'm proud of you, Emma. I'm proud of who you are. And I'm sorry I wasn't there to watch you become this person." Emma's device finally lit up. WHYDIDYOULEAVE. The question hung in the air, brutal in its simplicity. Christine didn't look away from her daughter's eyes. "Because I was broken. Because I thought love meant fixing things, and when I couldn't fix you, I didn't know what love meant anymore. Your daddy taught me I was wrong. Love means showing up even when you can't fix anything. Love means being there in the struggle. I learned that too late." DOYOULOVEME. "More than anything," Christine said immediately. "I always have. I just didn't know how to love you right." Emma was quiet for a long time. Then, IFORGIVEYOU. Christine sobbed, her thin frame shaking with the force of it. "Thank you. Thank you, baby. You're better than I deserve. BUTDADDYAMAFAMILYANDDSARAHACHOICETOO. The words were devastating in their clarity. Forgiveness, yes, but also boundaries. Also, the truth that leaving has consequences and love requires more than biology. Marcus's face was wet with tears. Sarah was crying silently, and Christine nodded, accepting what she'd earned. "You're right," she whispered. "They're your family. The ones who stayed. The ones who chose you every day. I'm grateful you have them." The visit lasted 30 minutes. When they left, Emma was quiet but not upset. In the car on the way home, her device finally spoke again. INEEDEDTOSEEHER. TOKNOWITSNOTMYFAULTSHELEFT. Marcus driving had to pull over because he couldn't see through his tears. Sarah reached back and held Emma's hand. "It was never your fault, sweetheart. Never. You are perfect exactly as you are." "IKNOW," Emma said. "BECAUSEYOUND DADDTAUGHTME." Christine died 3 weeks later. Marcus took Emma to the funeral, and Emma had her device play a pre-recorded message. "Thank you for giving me life. I forgive you for leaving it. Rest in peace, Mom." It was grace that Christine didn't deserve, but Emma gave anyway, because that's what Marcus and Sarah had taught her about being human. 3 years later, Sarah stood in front of the hospital board presenting a proposal that had taken her months to develop. Emma's voice had grown beyond a support group into something bigger, a comprehensive program providing respite care, medical advocacy, adaptive equipment lending, and family support services for children with complex neurological needs. "What we're asking for," Sarah said, clicking to her final slide, "is official hospital sponsorship and funding to expand this program statewide. Currently, we serve approximately 300 families in the Albuquerque area. With proper funding, we could serve thousands across New Mexico." The board members studied the data Sarah had compiled. Success stories, testimonials, research showing that comprehensive family support reduced hospital readmissions, improved patient outcomes, increased family stability. The hospital CEO, a stern woman in her 60s, looked up from the documents. "This is impressive, Ms. Hartley, but programs of this scope require significant leadership. Who would direct it?" "I would," Sarah said. "I've completed my nurse practitioner certification. I know these families because I'm part of one. I know what they need because I've lived it. And I know this program works because I've watched it change lives over the past 3 years. Your proposal mentions motorcycle rallies as a fundraising component," another board member said, skepticism clear in his voice. "That seems unconventional for a hospital program." Sarah smiled. "Unconventional, yes, but effective. The motorcycle community has raised over $200,000 for Emma's Voice in the past 2 years through annual rallies. They've donated adaptive equipment, provided volunteer support, and created a network of families who support each other. Bikers understand brotherhood, chosen family, and protecting vulnerable people. That's exactly what this program is about." The board deliberated for 15 minutes that felt like hours. Finally, the CEO spoke. The board approves your proposal, Ms. Hartley. Congratulations. You're now the director of Emma's Voice, a hospital-sponsored family support program. Sarah called Marcus the moment she left the boardroom. We did it. Emma's Voice is official, hospital-sponsored, funded, real. Marcus's voice came through, rough with emotion. You did it? You built something that's going to help thousands of families. We built it, Sarah corrected. You and Emma and the brothers and all the families who shared their stories. This is all of ours. Legacy, Marcus said softly. This is what legacy looks like. The first annual Emma's Voice motorcycle rally happened on a Saturday in June, exactly 7 years after that first meeting at Rosa's Diner. Over 800 motorcycles showed up thundering through Albuquerque in formation, raising awareness and funds for families with disabled children. Leading the pack was Marcus, now 70 years old, his beard completely white, his body slower but his spirit undimmed. Emma, at 15, rode in her specialized sidecar, her communication device, broadcasting pre-recorded messages to the crowds. Thank you for supporting families like mine. Behind them rode the brothers Jake at 70, Tommy at 67, Mike at 62, Danny at 70. Behind them, hundreds of other bikers, many of them parents of disabled children themselves, all of them riding for a cause they understood. And riding alongside Marcus on her own motorcycle, a birthday gift from the brothers, when she'd finally agreed to let them teach her, was Sarah, now 31, a nurse practitioner and program director wearing leather that matched the brothers' vests, with her own patch, Emma's Voice. Family forever. They rode through the city to a park where a festival was waiting. Adaptive playground equipment that Emma's Voice had fundraised for. Information booths, resource tables, medical professionals volunteering their time. And everywhere, families with disabled children, no longer isolated, no longer alone. Marcus dismounted slowly, his cardiac condition managed, but always present a reminder that time was finite and precious, and helped Emma from the sidecar. Sarah was there immediately, the three of them forming their familiar unit. Look at this, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion as he surveyed the crowd. Look at what you built. What we built, Sarah insisted. This started because you let me feed Emma 7 years ago, because you saw potential in a struggling waitress and invested in her future, because you taught me that family is about showing up. Emma's device spoke DADYIMSPROUD. I am, Marcus confirmed. So damn proud of you, Emma, of you, Sarah, of what we all built together. A young father approached his daughter in a wheelchair beside him. Mr. Reeves, I'm David. We met at the first Emma's Voice meeting 3 years ago. My daughter Sophie, you remember? Marcus studied them, then smiled. Sophie, who likes knock-knock jokes and has a crush on a boy in her class named Tyler. David laughed, amazed. You remember. I remember all our families, Marcus said simply. I wanted to thank you. David continued. 3 years ago, I was drowning, ready to give up. You told me I could do this, that I wasn't alone. You were right. Sophie's thriving. I'm thriving. Because of this program. Because you shared your story. That's what family does, Marcus said, pulling the man into a brief hug. We lift each other up. Sophie's device, similar to Emma's, lit up Emma is my hero. Emma's device responded, we are both heroes. All kids like us are heroes. Sarah watched this exchange, her heart so full it hurt. This was why she'd become a nurse. This moment right here. Connection, understanding, community. Love that rippled out from one simple act of kindness 7 years ago. The festival continued into the evening. Music played, food was shared, children laughed, adaptive playground equipment, allowing kids with all abilities to play together. And through it all, Marcus and Sarah and Emma moved through the crowd, greeting families, sharing hugs, building the community that had saved them all. As the sun set over the Sandia Mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson that reminded Sarah of that first evening at Rosa's Diner, Marcus found a quiet bench and sat heavily. His face was gray, his breathing slightly labored. Sarah was beside him immediately. You okay? Do you need your medication? I'm fine, Marcus said, but he let her check his pulse anyway, accepted the water bottle she pressed into his hand. Just old, tired, happy. You did good today, Sarah said softly. We did good, Marcus corrected. He looked at Emma, who was surrounded by other kids, her device lighting up as she communicated with them, her face showing that particular brightness that meant pure joy. She's happy, Sarah, really happy. She has friends, community, a future. She has you, Sarah said. That's why she has all those other things. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching his daughter. I need to tell you something. The doctors did some tests last month. Heart's getting weaker. They're talking about a transplant list, but at 70, I'm not a good candidate. Sarah's breath caught. Marcus, I'm not telling you this to scare you, he interrupted gently. I'm telling you because I need you to know that whatever time I have left, months, years, however long, I'm at peace. Because Emma's going to be okay. She has you. She has the brothers. She has this community we built together. You're not going anywhere, Sarah said fiercely. Maybe not today, Marcus agreed, but someday. And when that day comes, I need you to remember something. He turned to face her, his weathered face serious. You fed my daughter 7 years ago, 20 minutes out of your shift. And from that 20 minutes came everything, your education, your career, this program, this community. Hundreds of families helped because you show one small act of kindness to a scared biker and his disabled daughter. His voice roughened. That's legacy, Sarah. That's how one moment of seeing someone's humanity ripples out and changes the world. You changed my world, Emma's world, and now you're changing the world for hundreds of other families. That started with kindness, with choice, with love that had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with seeing what mattered. Sarah was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. You changed my world too. You saved me, Marcus. You and Emma. You showed me what family could be, what I was capable of, what love really means. We saved each other, Marcus said. That's how the best stories work. Emma rolled over in her wheelchair, her device already lighting up. Why is everyone crying? This is a happy day. Marcus laughed, wiping his eyes. You're right, baby girl. This is a happy day. We're just having happy tears. Happy tears are weird, Emma declared, and both Marcus and Sarah laughed harder. The rally ended with a closing ceremony. Sarah stood at a microphone looking out at hundreds of faces, families, bikers, medical professionals, community members, all brought together by a program that had started with a conversation in a hospital conference room. 7 years ago, Sarah began, I was a waitress working double shifts, barely surviving, convinced my life would never be more than just getting by. Then I met a man and his daughter, a Hell's Angel and a 7-year-old with cerebral palsy, and they changed everything. She looked at Marcus and Emma in the front row. They taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up, about seeing each other's humanity, about refusing to let each other face the world alone. Her voice strengthened. Emma's voice started as a support group, 20 families in a hospital conference room. Today we serve over 800 families across New Mexico. We provide respite care, medical advocacy, adaptive equipment, family counseling, and most importantly, community, connection, the knowledge that you are not alone in this journey. Sarah paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Every family here has a story. Every child here has challenges. But you're not defined by those challenges. You're defined by how you face them, by who stands beside you, by the love that shows up especially when things are hard. Next year, we're expanding to Arizona and Texas. In 5 years, we hope to be nationwide. And it all started because one man loved his daughter enough to ride 3,000 miles with her in a sidecar. Because one waitress took 20 minutes to feed a little girl. Because kindness rippled out in ways none of us could have predicted. She raised her hands, inviting everyone to stand. To everyone here, the families, the volunteers, the bikers who ride for those who can't, the medical professionals who give their time, the community members who donate and support, thank you. Thank you for being the village that these kids need. Thank you for showing up. The crowd erupted in applause. Emma's device played a pre-recorded message at full volume. Thank you for loving people like me. Later that night, after the crowds had dispersed and the equipment was packed away, Marcus and Sarah and Emma sat in Sarah's apartment, the same apartment Marcus had paid for 7 years ago, the one that had become home base for all of them. Emma was asleep in her room, exhausted from the excitement of the day. Marcus and Sarah sat on the balcony watching the city lights sparkle against the dark mountain backdrop. I'm proud of you, Marcus said quietly, more proud than I have words for. I'm proud of you too, Sarah replied. You could have given up so many times when Christine left, when your heart gave you trouble, when things got hard, but you didn't. You kept showing up for Emma, for me, for all those families. Showing up is all any of us can do, Marcus said. Some days that's enough. Some days it has to be enough. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from 7 years of chosen family, of shared struggles and victories, of becoming essential parts of each other's lives. Whatever happens, Marcus said finally, however much time I have left, I want you to know I'm at peace. Emma's going to be okay. She has you. And you're going to keep building this legacy, keep helping families, keep showing people that disability doesn't mean diminished humanity. We'll do it together, Sarah said firmly. You're not done yet, old man. You've got years left. Emma's going to need you to teach her to drive her wheelchair like a motorcycle, to walk her down the aisle someday if she wants to get married, to be there for all the big moments. Marcus smiled. I'll do my best. But if I can't, if my time runs out before those moments come, you'll be there for her. I know you will. Always, Sarah promised. She's my sister. You're my dad. This is my family. I'm not going anywhere. Neither am I, Marcus said. Not yet. Not while Emma still needs me. She'll always need you, Sarah said softly. So will I. So you better stick around. Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied, and they sat together watching the stars emerge, two people who'd found each other by accident and built a family by choice, creating something beautiful and lasting from nothing more than kindness and 20 minutes in a desert diner. Inside, Emma slept peacefully, safe and loved, and surrounded by a community that saw her humanity first and her disability second. Outside, the desert stretched vast and eternal, holding space for all the stories of all the people who'd learned that the best families are the ones we build ourselves. And somewhere on the highways between cities, hundreds of bikers carried the message forward that love doesn't require perfection, that family is about showing up, that the smallest acts of kindness can ripple out and change everything. All it took was chicken tenders, cut small, a chocolate milkshake, and a young woman who understood that some things aren't done for money. They're done because they're right, because everyone deserves to be seen, because showing up matters more than anything else. And because sometimes in the space between one heartbeat and the next, strangers become family and change each other's worlds in ways that echo forward through time, touching lives they'll never meet, building legacies that outlast any single lifetime. That's the road home, not a place on a map, but a feeling of belonging, of being seen, of choosing each other against all odds and building something that matters. Marcus, Sarah, and Emma had found their way home, and in doing so, they'd shown hundreds of other families the way to theirs.